Hey guys, this is Ryan from themoviesdeadworld.net. I've been away for a little while since I really wasn't in the mood to do video reviews. Unfortunately, it does take up a lot of time, and I really just haven't had that time right now. I've been busy with work, busy with our podcast, the Blood Black Rum podcast. We do have a website. Check us out. Little advertisement for that. And also, just doing my reviews on the website is, takes up a lot of my time as it is. So I don't have a ton of time to do video reviews when I get home from work. But I do want to get back on that, and one of the films that I really wanted to do a video review for was Severin Films' new Blu-Ray release of Doctor Butcher M.D. / Zombi Holocaust. Now, you may have heard of Zombi Holocaust because it's one of the films within the 70s cannibal / zombie era that was actually, kind of well known. Certainly not as well known as things like Cannibal Holocaust. But that's the cut of this film that most people are familiar with. Now, there's another cut of the film called Doctor Butcher M.D., and that's the one that Severin Films is really putting the focus on for this Blu-ray release. In my opinion, it is the better cut of the film. It has a better soundtrack. It adds a little bit more to the film that Zombie Holocaust does not have, and so I do prefer this one over Zombie Holocaust, and some people are going to totally disagree with me. They're going to think, oh, no, I love Zombie Holocaust for the nostalgia factor. It has a distinctive 70s soundtrack, which Dr. Butcher M.D. more adopts like a synth-based soundtrack, so just a difference there. But there's not a huge amount of differences. Like, you're not going to get an entirely different movie from Dr. Butcher M.D., so, keep that in mind when you're setting out to watch both the versions of these films, because they're not going to differ entirely from each other. But anyway, most of my review is going to center on Dr. Butcher M.D. because that's the better cut for me, and also because that's the one that Severin Films is really pushing on this Blu-ray set, because Dr. Butcher M.D. is the artwork and everything that gets put on this Blu-ray, so that's the one that Severin Films is going with. So, let's get right into it. Dr. Butcher M.D. sounds like a slasher thriller about a doctor who butchers his victims, but really it's not. It's a zombie cannibal film. So, you're going to see a lot of stylistic choices like The Mountain of the Cannibal God and Emmanuel and the Last Cannibals, or Zombie. Zombie being a predecessor of Dr. Butcher M.D. / Zombie Holocaust. Features a 2K restoration from Severin Films for the Dr. Butcher M.D. side of it, and a nice HD transfer of Zombie Holocaust uncut. While the differences between both of the films are pretty minuscule, the new edition of Dr. Butcher M.D. is the highlight of this Blu-ray package, as I said before, because it is the better cut in my opinion. The film follows Laurie Ridgway, who's played by Alexandra Delacalle, Dr. Peter Chandler, Ian McCulloch, Susan Kelly, who's played by Sherry Buchanan, and George Happer, played by Peter O'Neill. They set out to find an island full of cannibals who worship this god Keto. Laurie seems to know a lot about this, considering her work in anatomy class doesn't really mesh with her knowledge of, ancient gods. But alas, there's really not a huge amount of plot within Dr. Butcher M.D. anyway, so you're kind of just asked to go with it. Dr. Butcher M.D. initially takes place in New York City, so we do get a lot of settings in New York City. You see some city backdrops. Some high-rise buildings, even though most people are speaking in Italian. But then it becomes apparent that the researchers need the help of Dr. Obrero, who's played by Donald O'Brien. And so they actually set out to go to an island to find the last known cannibals who celebrate Keto. This direction by Marino Girolami is kind of a mess, and it certainly shows in the Dr. Butcher M.D. cut of the film, especially because the one-sheet and tagline for this make really little sense when compared to the movie's content. On the one sheet, you kind of have a doctor who has his surgical instruments, and even the tagline is about the doctor basically saying he's a murderer and a rapist. And really, there's very little of that within Doctor Butcher M.D. actually. It's mostly about the cannibals, and later on, some zombies who also show up because of Doctor Butcher's experiments with them. Despite that, like I said, Doctor Butcher M.D. is the better edited film. It cuts down the minutes of footage. It's slightly shorter than Zombie Holocaust when you have the uncut version. So, it's cutting down on scenes that really add little to the plot, like some walking and driving scenes. They really help to add to the pace of the film. There's also a complete overhaul of Zombie Holocaust soundtrack. There's a synthesizer score, which I really enjoy, actually. It's a very nice synth score, which is entirely different from Zombie Holocaust's more 70s themed psych prog rock stylings that it's got within its soundtrack. So I really find Dr. Butcher M.D. a lot more enjoyable than Zombie Holocaust. And, if you can overcome some of the rather lackluster and horribly muddled plot lines, then there's actually quite a lot to like about the film itself. Romano Scandariato, hopefully I said that correct, his screenplay channels the same themes as some better known and honestly better made films like Cannibal Holocaust and Cannibal Pharaoh, with vaguely racist stereotypes of the cannibals that are attacking our innocent victims. And I said vaguely. These moments highlight the excellent practical effects created by Maurizio Trani. He used some real pig innards combined with clay and latex props, and a lot of these are actually very realistic looking. Dr. Butcher M.D. boasts some authentic visuals. There's an autopsy scene, which is pretty nice. Some head surgery, very well done. And there's also a quarter who gets stuck in an unfortunate spike trap, which kind of resembles some things that you might see later on in Cannibal Holocaust. Maybe not as well done, not as snuff film-esque as you would see in that later film where they actually got in trouble for it, but still some pretty convincing effects. This is a fun Italian nasty, and that's probably the best reason that I can think of to recommend it to people who haven't seen it before. The story is problematic, and that's the portion of it that's kind of disappointing when you take in the practical effects that are done for the film. Girolami struggles to put a lot of the film's subplots into a proper context. It never really manages to explore its keto cannibals very properly. And later in the film, it pits those cannibals against real zombies created by Dr. Butcher in the storyline. And that's really an attempt to shoehorn some of the zombies from Zombie or Zombie 2, whatever you want to call it, into this film. I mean, they are basically the same sort of designs. If you're watching Dr. Butcher M.D., you'll notice that they also try to get those zombies into the beginning portion of the film, putting them into the credits of the film, which is not something that's a part of Zombie Holocaust. That was added later for Dr. Butcher M.D. It's kind of a weird setup where zombies and cannibals collide. But, it is what it is. Even though it doesn't really serve the plot all that well, and it kind of devolves into silliness, it's a little bit different from some of the other cannibal films, at least. That's what I can say. Even Laurie becoming the cannibal queen and deploying cannibals to eliminate the zombie threat, and Dr. Obrero / Dr. Butcher, whatever his name is after he assumes his identity, doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, and it doesn't really come to fruition until the last part of the film. It was always hinted at because, Laurie seems to have a weird fascination with the keto people, even though there's nothing really to cement her in that scenario. No explanation given. But that's pretty much what Dr. Butcher M.D. is. A lot of good violence and gore. Sitting pretty well within that niche in the 70s for cannibal films. But just not a really good story at all. Despite the relatively good special effects, there's also some noticeable errors. There's a scene where a cannibal dives from a window, and you can clearly see that as he falls, the dummy smashes into the ground and loses a limb in the process. But then when we zoom back into the real person laying on the ground, he's still got his leg. How did that get reattached? So just things like that are very noticeable within this film. It's clear that there wasn't a whole lot of editing done in that regard. Someone missed that, and they should feel ashamed of themselves because that's a pretty noticeable error within this film. But obviously the practical effects are nice to have, so that can kind of be overlooked, I guess. But most who appreciate Italian zombie films are probably going to enjoy this release from Severin, especially with both of the feature films in it. Even though Zombie Holocaust and Doctor Butcher M.D. don't really differ all that much, it's nice to have the uncut version of Zombie Holocaust, and then it's also nice to have Doctor Butcher M.D., which does cut down on some of the unnecessary filler scenes within Zombie Holocaust. Neither will disappoint fans of cannibal gore and carnage, but there are better films in this style, and you really need to keep that in mind, especially as you're watching the film. And keep in mind that some of those films were released after Zombie Holocaust, so probably taking some an inspiration from this film, if nothing else. So best to keep that in mind. As for the actual Blu-ray copy of this that comes from Severin Films, it's a nice package, honestly. Like I said, Dr. Butcher M.D. gets a nice restoration from the original negative elements of the film. Obviously, there are going to be some flaws with this negative. There's a lot of grain definition, although it doesn't detract too much from the film. There's some noticeable film damage as well. You're going to get some lines that pop up on the sides and some, weathering elements that just probably were out of the Severin Films' control, obviously. However, the film was kept, and it's lost some quality over time, but just be aware that is a part of this Blu-ray edition, and there's nothing that Severin Films can do about it. Obviously the damage is there, and using that negative, it comes with those issues, but otherwise this is probably one of the best releases of the films that I've seen. If you've seen the copy that is on YouTube right now, I think that's a version of Zombie Holocaust. It clearly is a lot worse, in a lot worse condition than what you're going to get on this Blu-ray, which is always expected. Severin Films did the work to transfer this into a nice high definition picture, and you are probably going to notice a huge difference if you've seen it in any other format before. Zombie Holocaust gets a transfer from the original 16mm film, and it actually looks really good. I think that Severin did a really good job with this restoration based on how much damage was actually done to these copies. So it's about as clean as can be. Audio is also pretty good. Dr. Butcher gets an English audio track which emphasizes the great synthesizer soundtrack. That's at the forefront of this picture, so that's really nice to have. And Zombie Holocaust includes an original Italian audio track, but you're not going to get English subtitles with it, so it's going to be difficult to follow along if you haven't seen the film before. But you can watch it in that original Italian if you want to. There's also the English version of it, which is also very good, and it has that original soundtrack that Dr. Butcher M.D. does not have. The double disc Blu-ray from Severin Films is full of content. It has a few hours of extra features. Both discs have special features, so if you are just here to check out Dr. Butcher M.D., don't forget to pop in Zombie Holocaust, because that's also got some special features as well. The Dr. Butcher M.D. side of things has the new special features. One is a half-hour interview with the Aquarius Releasing's Terry Levine. So he worked in the grindhouse / adult film industry in the 42nd Street era. So he kind of talks about that, as well as working on Dr. Butcher M.D. in the recuts to Zombie Holocaust that occurred. There's also a walk down 42nd Street in present day with Chris Poggielli and Ray Frumkes, and that is where he discusses his involvement and in the grindhouse and adult film industry during the 42nd Street period. So a lot of talk about the 42nd Street era, which is good, although sometimes it kind of deviates from what Dr. Butcher M.D. has for content. So they're not always talking about Dr. Butcher M.D. stuff. So that's something that you may want to watch, and you don't even need to have seen Dr. Butcher M.D. for some of these to really glean some information from the special features. There's also a portion of Frumke's Tales That Will Tear Your Heart Out, which was an unfinished anthology series. Had a few anthologies and never was released, and that short is included on here with some commentary as well. There's also a featurette on a really odd press junket that occurred for Doctor Butcher M.D. It's where there was a butcher mobile where people went out actually dressed as doctors and nurses, and they did like a weird sort of play in the streets. So the butcher mobile gets a highlight here as they talk about the butcher mobile. And there's also an illustrated essay from Gary Hertz that's on the first disc as well. On the second disc with Zombie Holocaust, there's cast and crew interviews. Ian McCulloch documents his time working on Dr. Butcher M.D., along with Sherry Buchanan, who talks about her work on the film, also her work in other Italian horror and grindhouse pictures, the nudity that she did, and how she got into the business in the first place, and why she left, and that kind of corresponded with a softcore porn film that she did, where they actually added some hardcore elements in with a stunt double, and everybody kind of assumed that she was the one that did them, so she kind of got out of Hollywood after that. Enzo Castellari gives a history of his father, who was director Marino Girolami. Maurizio Trani gives a very brief, which is only 4-minute, interview about his work on the special effects. And along with that, Rosario Prestopini gives an interview before his passing in 2008, so it's kind of an older interview about his contribution to the special effects as well. There's a brief location spotting guide, which has no dialogue in it at all. It's just an alteration of here's the setting from the film, and here's what it looks like now in New York City. Which is always very interesting. I like how Severin Films includes those, because sometimes you'll see that a lot of things change and sometimes not that much has changed. For New York City, not a whole lot has changed, honestly. So it's very interesting to see those settings today. There's a stunning number of special features on this disc, and a lot of them cover more ground than just Dr. Butcher M.D. / Zombie Holocaust, so that's kind of interesting. There's a reversible cover art with Zombie Holocaust, so if you like Zombie Holocaust more, you can certainly flip the cover artwork over and have Zombie Holocaust on the front of your case. And if you were one of the first orders, or if you got a review copy like me, then you probably snagged a limited edition Dr. Butcher M.D. vomit bag as well. So when you're watching and you're really feeling with an upset stomach, you can always vomit into it, although that's going to really deplete the value on that, so I would hold off on the vomit. Try your hands instead. I would definitely recommend this film and this release for anybody who's very interested in the Italian cannibal films, or anybody that's really interested in horror history, really. And it's certainly worth a watch at least one time, just to see what all the fuss is about for Dr. Butcher M.D. Why is this film, which isn't technically a very great film, why is it so well received in the horror community? I mean, as you can see from this review, it's mostly the gore effects, honestly. So let me know what you thought about Dr. Butcher M.D. I'm really curious to see what other horror fans were thinking when they saw the film, because I know I've never seen it before, but I have seen a lot of the other 70s cannibal films, and I think it holds up pretty well comparatively to those other films. So I'm curious to see what other people thought of that. So leave me a comment on that. Let me know what you thought. Did you pick up Severin Films' copy of it? Let me know how you thought about the Severin Films edition of this package. Other than that, please subscribe and certainly give us a like on this video. It's always nice to have that sort of positive reinforcement that I'm doing something great. And also check out themoonasdeadworld.net, because that's where I post all my reviews as I write them, and that's I pretty much try to update that every day with reviews. So that's where you're going to find things first. Then after that, I kind of come to YouTube and I do my video review, and probably it's a couple weeks late at that point. So that's why you're getting this now and not back in July when I originally wrote the review. But I'm going to try to do video reviews more. I know I fell off the wagon here, but I'm going to try to get back on it and do some more video reviews. So definitely subscribe, and I will be back next time with another review. Don't you fret.